and welcome to yet another episode of Stand Up, where I bring on the best experts I can find, the smartest people I can, to talk about the hardest, biggest problems that we have and deal with on a regular basis in our country, in our planet, in our lives. And today I've got the great Dr. Michael Mann and Dr. Peter Hotez joining me together to talk about their new book, Science Under Siege: How to Fight the 5 Most Powerful Forces That Threatened the World. It is so good. They are so good. Had an awesome conversation with these two most respected and well-known scientists in the world. They've spent years on the front lines of the battle to convey accurate, reliable, and trustworthy information about the science in the face of a determined and nihilistic opposition. Yes, I'm reading from the back cover of their new book, and yes, you should go get it now. You're going to want this one. Science Under Siege, Mann and Hotez on the show today. If you want to jump to it, it begins at 36 minutes in. But I do have some headlines and clips for you, and I want to get to it right now. Can't do any of it without your support. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Thanks very much for being here. Got a crazy busy couple days. Yesterday, I was in New York City as a guest on Michael Ian Black's new podcast, which I hope you will listen. I think it should drop this time, sometime this week. But Michael Ian Black, of course, is one of the members of the show Have I Got News for You on CNN with Roy Wood and Amber Ruffin. But he's also got this new podcast that he's doing, which is like he's done just a few episodes of it, because it's called Have I Got News for Your Ears? Comedy podcast, and it's very smart and takes on the news of the week. I had a great time. I hope that you listened to it. Then I had meetings all day about the big kind of town hall that I'm moderating for my local Democrats, the Clarkstown Democrats in Rockland County, New York. I'll be doing that tonight. If anybody is listening and lives in the area and wants to come, would love to see you. Doubtful that not a lot of local people that listen to the podcast, because so many of them are people that know me and despise me. A lot of MAGA folks in my town, including, I think, some of the young Republicans who got caught with a very racist, horrific messages in a chat. Did you hear about that? Let's get to those headlines right now, starting with not the most important story, but because I mentioned it. In Politico yesterday, they published this story where they got a hold of leaked text messages from young Republicans around the country, and they are very, very bad. Thousands of private messages revealing young Republican leaders joking about gas chambers, slavery, and rape. You know, just the norm. Nothing too crazy. But this is a pretty big story, pretty big deal. They referred to black people as monkeys and, quote, the watermelon people. That's how they referred to them in public in their text messages, rather in private in their text messages. So if you're shocked, I'm shocked that you're shocked, I guess. All right, moving on to bigger, though more important news stories, I think worth mentioning. Yesterday, our Department of Defense, our Secretary of War, whatever he is, the drunken former Fox News guy, received a stunning rebuke from nearly every media company that covers the Pentagon, including Fox and Newsmax, who I believe spread the rumors that Obama wasn't born here and, you know, that Trump won the election and so much more. Yeah, even those networks refused to sign the agreement to abide by Hegseth's lengthy set of paranoid rules restricting their coverage of military issues. The deadline to sign was 6 p.m. last night, but only far-right fringe outlet OAN signed. CNN, Fox, ABC, NBC, and CBS issued a joint statement writing, "We join virtually every other news organization in declining to agree to the Pentagon's new requirements, which would restrict journalists' ability to keep the nation and the world informed in important national security issues. The policy is without precedent, threatens core journalistic protections. We will continue to cover the U.S. military as each of our organizations has done for many decades, upholding the principles of a free and independent press." Yeah, that's what you want, an independent press. I know what I said, Vicky. Okay. So I thought that was a pretty big deal story. A lot of people talking about it, commenting on it. Lieutenant General Mark Hertling said, "For the record, there are 17 pages worth of requirements, and the only people that buy this shortened version from Hegseth are true dummies," because Hegseth put out a response on social media saying that Pentagon access is a privilege, not a right. So here's Department of War press credentialing for dummies. Press no longer roams free. Press must wear visible badge. Credentialed press no longer permitted to solicit criminal acts. Done. Pentagon has the same rules as every U.S. military installation. But of course, Of course, no one was roaming free, and everybody had to wear credentials. Just making this up. I mean, all these different reporters that cover the Pentagon are basically debunking all of that. Journalists have never been able to roam free in the Pentagon. Journalists have always worn visible badges. Journalists ask what the department is doing with taxpayers' money in their name. They do not solicit criminal acts. That's Paul McCleary, who covers the Pentagon for Politico. Our old friend Olivier Knox, working for U.S. News and World Report covering the Pentagon, says press never roamed free, always had visible badges. In a republic, the press cannot limit itself to what government approves for release, and it goes on from there. But that was a big story yesterday. Another big story, moving on, is that House Republicans in general are terrified and warning and trying to create controversy around this weekend's No Kings rallies. And they held their daily shutdown press conference yesterday where they once again attacked this weekend's rallies. And here's one. Congressman Tom Emmer, we call it the Hate America rally because you see the hate for America all over this thing when they show up. The rumors they can't end this shutdown because this very small, very violent group is the only one that's happy about this. What? It's weird when you hear political leaders and others talk about your feelings in ways that don't represent your feelings or opinions. But that's old hat for them. Fox reporter asked Mike Johnson about keeping the House out of session to block a vote on the Epstein files. And he's basically saying, we got to be careful here. We don't want these files to come out with these names unredacted. Thousands of victims, many were underage, and we don't want them to suffer further harm. Well, one intern could redact names. Give me one intern and a black marker that should get an hour. Like, what are you talking about? How is he still getting away with saying that that's the reason why they're not putting more files out? Will we ever see more? I think we will. Yeah, I think it's a matter of time. We'll see. Yeah. All right. Well, of course, you had the big news story yesterday is what's continued to unfold in the Middle East. News reports from, ABC. The Israeli Defense Forces said its troops opened fire on Palestinians in Gaza City, killing 5 after they allegedly violated the terms of the ceasefire agreement, according to a Palestinian civil defense spokesman. And apparently Hamas was executing other Palestinians who they considered collaborators in public. So is the war over? I don't think it's over. I don't think there's peace. I'm pretty sure there's not peace. So, well, we'll continue to follow what's going on there. Yesterday, I had an email from a longtime listener named Sean, who I really appreciated, who said he disagreed with me saying that Trump should not get credit. I went off on a bit of a rant on yesterday's podcast saying that I don't think that Trump deserves credit. And he said, it takes away from your credibility if you can't give him credit where credit is deserved. But I'll be more specific. I'll double down on that argument, Sean. Let me see exactly what Sean wrote. Said, I respectfully disagree with not giving Trump credit for anything, which seems to be your take. If you take that stance, you'll never give Trump credit for anything, even when he does something good. Then you lose credibility when you criticize him for things that he says or does that merit criticism. I don't think so. I mean, I respect your point a lot, Sean. Sean seems like a real smart guy, and I do appreciate that. And I'm always happy to take your criticism, and I'd even be happy to talk about this, if you wanted to record it. Anybody wanted to criticize this or any other opinion that I share. But no, I don't think he deserves – I don't think he's legally president. I don't think he should be president. That isn't the reason why he shouldn't be given credit just because he's a criminal. I mean, put it this way, Sean, and everybody else who disagrees with me. Steve Bannon says, there's so much happy talk coming out of the Israel First crowd that doesn't face reality. The reality is that now you got yourself a two-state solution with big-time muscle backing Palestinians. Also, thought it was worth mentioning that there's plenty of reporting, and I think everybody knows this is true, that former President Trump, before he became president, got on the phone with the Prime Minister of Israel and urged him not to cut a deal when the Biden administration put forward a very similar deal because he said it would help the Harris campaign. Remember, Trump did that with immigration as well. Told Republicans, do not cut that deal because it will help Democrats and it will get rid of that wedge issue. Same thing here. The architect of the negotiations that freed Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit 2011 is a guy named Gershon Baskin. He revealed that Hamas had agreed the exact same terms of the deal back about a year ago, September 24, the last months of the Biden administration. He wrote, this deal could have been done a long time ago. Hamas agreed to all the same terms in what would became known as the 3-week deal that I had received in writing. But at that point, the response of the Israeli negotiators was that the prime minister did not agree to end the war. And the report is that that's because Trump told him not to. Netanyahu actually flew to Mar-a-Lago for a private meeting with Trump 3 weeks before he rejected the peace proposal, despite the fact that he was not president at the time. Trump made sure that he did not make peace because he wanted to get credit for it. So I'm not giving him credit. I'm not giving this guy credit for killing a previous deal on this, on immigration and other things so that he could later get credit for it. It's craven. It's sick. It's sick to think that he did that he interfered, and it would be like lighting a fire and then putting it out and then getting an award for putting out the fire. I don't want to give him credit. Love to hear what you think, Sean, and anybody who disagrees with me on it for sure. And really appreciate you writing that email and disagreeing with me, criticizing me. I welcome it. There's not enough of it, and I'm happy to hear it. So maybe you'll convince me otherwise. Also want to mention the list of airports refusing to play Kristi Noem's outrageous partisan political PSA, video blaming Democrats for airport delays continues to grow. Portland, Seattle, Niagara Falls International, Buffalo Niagara International, Westchester County Airport, Phoenix International, Las Vegas, Charlotte, Cleveland, LAX, JFK, LaGuardia, New York, and Newark all confirmed they will not play Kristi Noem's stupid video. And I think that's great. I'm sure we're going to see probably more airports that aren't going to agree. Also, Trump threatened that if Mamdani wins in New York, that he is going to defund New York City. Which is the craziest threat. Imagine that. If you elect this person, I, as king, am going to hurt you. It's what I don't know if he can or how he can, but we shouldn't put anything past our megalomaniac mad king of a president. Yeah. Also, we've got some reporting that the United States is preparing to supply Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles in what would be a very bold move intended to force an end to the brutal war in Russia. And that would be a real escalation. Apparently, those Tomahawk missiles are a real war changer. I almost said game changer, but it's a fucking war, and it's ugly. So that'll be an interesting development if it takes place under Trump's watch. I'll give him credit for that. How about that, Sean? All right. Well, those are the headlines that I've gathered for you, and I look forward to hearing from you. If I don't have a news story, it's your fault. You can send it to me all day long. standupwithpete@gmail.com. I usually don't get to it till after dinner, East Coast time, when I actually lay down the news stories because I like to wait till the day is kind of over to do it. So send me what you're seeing during the day. standupwithpete@gmail.com and just write in today's news story or something that identifies it. And that way I can sort it out and get to it later. All right. You can help me do that and the clip show. And I got a real humdinger for you today, but you can also send me clips. Same email, but clips in the subject. How about that? Always helpful. And many of you do it, and I really appreciate it. Okay. Let's get first to this clip from Jennifer Welch, the Ms. Welch. The podcast is I've Had It. They do such a good job, and they did a real number on Cory Booker. They were not letting him off the hook yesterday for his overwhelming support for Israel, for his vote for Jared Kushner's dad to be the ambassador to France. Here it is.
Do you think he's a war criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu? Do you think he's a war criminal?
I again, these are questions that a lot of people think are the important litmus tests that are loaded and hot. My urgency is to be an effective leader in bringing an end to this crisis. And I get these questions all the time that, to me, undermine my urgency.
I think the thing that Democrats get so frustrated with, where we are right now, where you see the Zoran Mamdanis and the Graham Plattners rise up, because they can go on podcasts and you can say, do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal? And they just say, yes. And that's the end of it. It's not all of the rhetoric answering. It's what happens to Democratic politicians, they go through this prism, and then we can't ever get the answer to yes or no conversations you do with Bernie and others. And that's the frustration for the Democratic base.
Do I think Netanyahu is worse than Trump? Yes.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. Don't want to undermine your urgency, Senator Booker. And here's another clip. The whole interview is great, but this is when it gets even a little uglier. And I'm here for it. I think this is well done. This is how it should work.
Feels like the Democratic opposition is just not getting it. There are votes that you've made that were heartbreaking to me, like the vote for Kushner. That really pissed me off. This administration, it's not, are they fascist? They are fascist. It's not, we're on the precipice of fascism. Texas is sending troops to Illinois. I feel like the opposition needs to be fuck no across the board. We're not giving you a centimeter. And I think there's been a lot of capitulation, Neville Chamberlain type appeasement from Democratic leadership. And you're one of them that's kind of been disappointing to me because we podcasted before. They're serious about Project 2025. They're going to do all this shit. What do you have to say about the capitulation that you participated in and where the Democratic Party is right now?
Well, first of all, I would say very pointedly that one of the things I dislike about the Democratic Party is that we do a circular firing squad all the time. Their party, they disagree. There's wild disagreements in the Republican tent, and yet they don't shoot at each other. And we have a really good way of holding up these purity tests that if I agree with you on 95...
That's such bullshit. That is such bullshit. They fire at each other all the time. Trump has sent so many people out to pasture, so many people that he calls rhinos. Liz Cheney can tell you that they have the firing squad as well. It's not a purity test. It's, are we in this fight and are we being beholden to corporations and corporate interests? Are we really the party of the working class?
Yeah. Good stuff. Really well done. I think she does a great job. Got to hand it to him over there at the You've Had It podcast. Very popular, and that's good because that means these folks got to go on shows like theirs to be heard and seen. I don't love the purity testing and the lack of nuance in some conversations, but I thought in this case, I thought it was handled well. Let's go to the very boring, monotone chairman of the Fed. It's Jerome Powell basically saying in this clip that the immigration policies that have been instituted by this regime, where they're throwing out people who are here to work, migrant workers, and not letting other people that want to work come in, he says in a very boring way in this clip, if you listen closely, that the immigration policies that he doesn't want to weigh in on are definitely going to drag down the economy. Shocking.
Not specifically asked the question about the effect of immigration policies on labor supply. How restrictive do you think that current policy is? And is that something that will just...
Current immigration policy?
Yeah.
Yes. Let me start by saying that we don't have a view on immigration. It's not our job to have a view. So we take that as completely, it is what it is. We take it as it arrives. More, I'd say, a stronger policy than most people had expected. We've seen, very sharp decline in growth of the labor force and in people entering the country. And yeah, I think you're only beginning to see the strength of that policy too. There's more expulsions; those are rising, and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's a big economic factor. So that will mean fewer people to work. You have anecdotal evidence of industries that they're just having a hard time finding people. You don't see it in wages or anything like that at this point. You don't see, at least in the aggregate, you don't. But yeah, it's going to be a really important economic fact because that's new people who come into the workforce. They create their supply, but they also create demand. They create their own demand. And, again, from our standpoint, we're just, our job is to achieve maximum employment or maximum sustainable employment. And that will depend both on the supply of workers and the demand for workers.
There you go. Jerome Powell, chairman and Fairman of the Ched. Yeah, he basically just said that this is bad, the immigration policies of the Trump administration for the economy. And I don't think you needed to be the Fairman of the Ched to know that, but he did it. All right, now you got a little bit more upbeat clip because good old Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama, cut a clip for the ballot initiative that California needs to keep these Democrats' seats in the House. Here is the former president.
California, the whole nation is counting on you. Democracy is on the ballot November 4th. Republicans want to steal enough seats in Congress to rig the next election and wield unchecked power for 2 more years. With Prop 50, you can stop Republicans in their tracks. Prop 50 puts our elections back on a level playing field, preserves independent redistricting over the long term, and lets the people decide. Return your ballot today. Vote yes on 50.
Yeah, that's right. Vote yes on 50. All right. Now let's go to my state. My state governor is Kathy Hochul. She was asked by a reporter yesterday about these young Republicans' text messages. And she was asked, do you think it's just a few bad apples? Here's what she had to say.
Some bad apples. These are the future of the Republican Party. This was so vile. It is hard to find the words to put into context that these are people who are part of a political party, one of 2 major political parties, and they believe in gas chambers and rape and discrimination based on the color of people's skins. These are racist, sexist, disgusting remarks. And I would say this. We have a leader from the Republican Party in this state, the highest-ranking individual, who in the backdrop of all this calls our candidate for mayor, one of our candidates for mayor, a jihadist and a terrorist, and then somehow says, oh, what they said, these young Republicans, was wrong. Like, look at what you say yourself. Look at your inflammatory words. And maybe they have an effect on these young people, many of whom you support and have supported you. And you ought to just do a little reexamination of how far this has gone, where this is normalized enough that thousands of texts are uncovered. This is not one person saying they love Hitler. This is a whole lot of people saying things that are so disgusting and so abhorrent that everybody from the president on down should condemn them. And there's got to be consequences. Kick them out of the party. Take away their official roles. Stop using them as campaign advisors. There needs to be consequences. This bullshit has to stop.
Oh, wow. This bullshit has to stop. I like it. Yeah. Okay. There you go. Kathy Hochul yesterday. Now let's listen to a soybean farmer pleading and making the case as to why they don't want these bailouts. They want to sell their soybeans.
We don't want a bailout. We want a market. Bailouts don't work. Bailouts are Band-Aids. We aren't even made whole off of this. That's money that should be going towards senior citizens. That's money that should be going for the Affordable Care Act. That's money that should just be going to regular tax cuts for normal Americans and not billionaires. Period. Plain and simple. And what he is doing is destroying our markets. And when those markets disappear, we're not going to get them back.
Yeah. Well, just a horrible, horrible situation. I don't know what to say about that. Very concerned for all kinds of reasons and the ripple effect that has. And now let's listen to Jasmine Crockett, the congresswoman from Texas, who's always great. I love her on this rant, and I think she is very effective. Let's let her rip.
I cast my no vote because ain't nobody come at me and ask me what the people in my district need. Right. They didn't ask me what would look good for those in South Dallas. Right. They didn't ask me about that. So listen, I got people that I serve that are counting on me to do their work and to be their voice and not work for him. I don't work for him. He can't hire me. He can't fire me. The people that elected me in Texas 30 did. So unless you want to have a conversation with me about the priorities for the people in my district, baby, you're not getting this vote. Listen, he can do whatever he wants to do, but this will be on the Republicans. I need people to tune in and learn how to count and learn who controls what. If you want things to function, maybe put the Democrats back in control. Now, I know people got beef with the Democrats not being as aggressive as we should have been, especially since we got him over here just running ramshot over everything. But at a very minimum, you can always count on there being level-headedness and responsibility when it comes to Democrats, because they care about federal workers. They care about our constituents and making sure that those services are still available, because when the government shuts down, then that impacts our constituents directly. It does.
All right, there you go. Jasmine Crockett. Love it. Love, love, love it. Sometimes people say, I don't like the way that she talks. And I've heard people say, oh, she sounds too ghetto for me. And I say to those people, no, get over it. Get over it. I understand when you hear someone speaking in a way that makes you uncomfortable, makes it sound like it's not the Queen's English or whatever you are used to. But people code switch. Smart communicators are able to talk to different audiences differently. And she's great. She doesn't have the widest range on purpose. She could if she wanted to. She could probably speak with a British accent. She chooses to communicate that way because it is effective. And I am here for it. And have to be careful I don't code switch into it when I'm hanging out with black women. Or I just do, and whatever. I don't know. You can make fun of me for it. I've done it. Not above it. All right. Here is now I've got to share with you another clip. Sorry for talking so much between clips. But I think I needed to soften you up for this one because this is from The View. And yesterday they had Cheryl Hines on. She, of course, is an actress and the wife of our Health and Human Services Secretary, RFK Jr., which is just a crazy thing to say out loud that's what I'm about to share with you. The lady from Curb Your Enthusiasm talking seriously about our health and acting like she knows what the fuck she's talking about, much less the women on The View or me or anybody else does. That's why you should have scientists in charge of it anyway. Anyhow, Sonny Hostin on The View gives her a hard time. Joy Behar tries to be a little more even-handed, and I didn't love it, Joy, but here it is. Get ready.
Respectfully, is that your husband is the least qualified Department of Health and Human Services head that we've had in history. I think that's a very dangerous.
Why is he less qualified than an economist?
I think that he possible? Is less qualified.
He spent his career studying toxins, studying people's health, fighting for one guy who was using Roundup for his job.
He has also spread a lot of misinformation, a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion, and I think it's just a very dangerous thing. I say it with the utmost respect.
Some of it's good, and some of it's not. That's the point. Listen, we all have different views here. Yes. And when you say, misinformation, disinformation, we could go back to COVID when...
He's connecting circumcision to autism.
May I finish?
Please.
When Fauci were saying when you get the vaccine, you cannot transmit COVID. It will stop COVID. And that was disinformation, misinformation.
We were also still learning about it. It was a novel virus we've never encountered before. Right. Because now the doctors will acknowledge that it
and Dr. Fauci has a medical degree.
At the time, they were censoring Bobby because Bobby said, where's the science to show us this? And there wasn't any. But people attacked him and said, you're wrong. So it's like, let's take a step back. I know that's your opinion, and that's okay.
Okay, you can have your opinion, and that's okay. No. I don't want to have an opinion on vaccines. I don't want one. I don't want to do the work, the research that my guest Peter Hotez today has and millions of other scientists. At some point, I'm going to just let the HVAC guy fix whatever is wrong with my air conditioning. I'm not going to do it. There's not a YouTube video for that one. Okay. Well, there is. There's a billion. That's the problem, right? Telling you all kinds of crazy shit about crystals. Anyway, folks, I've got to sell some crystals right now. No, here, let's go to Fox News. Let's go to Bret Baier. Bret Baier was talking to former General Jack Keane on Fox News about the preposterous ideas that are coming out of the Secretary of War, as he calls him, Pete Hegseth. And I thought this was a great conversation. Ian, I think it's great that it was on Fox News, and I think it's great that all the networks and newspapers banded together in solidarity, as journalists should. People have been saying that should be the case. They drew the line, and we'll see what happens next. But very important, here's the conversation from Baier and General Keane, retired general.
I want to talk about the Pentagon and covering the Pentagon. There are these new stipulations, new rules that have been put out, and we in the media, along with all the networks and also newspapers, had a media statement to respond. It was due today, and here it is. Today we join virtually every other news organization in declining to agree to the Pentagon's new requirements, which would restrict journalists' abilities to keep the nation and the world informed of important national security issues. The policy is without precedent and threatens core journalistic protections. We will continue to cover the U.S. military, as each of our organizations has done for many decades, upholding the principles of a free and independent press. That's ABC News, CBS News, CNN, Fox News Media, and NBC News signing that. Here is the Secretary of War at the cabinet meeting in his interpretation of what all this means.
You have to wear a badge that identifies that you're press, or you can't just roam anywhere you want. It used to be, Mr. President, the press could go anywhere, pretty much anywhere in the Pentagon, the most classified area in the world. Or also that if they sign on to the credentialing, they're not going to try to get soldiers to break the law by giving them classified information. So it's common sense stuff.
Kind of simplified it there than what's on the paper. I covered the Pentagon for 6.5 years. I covered the White House for 4 years. I covered the Pentagon when you were there.
Yeah, right.
And we knew not to, you don't walk into the tank, and the classified areas are off limits. We obviously were always trying to get the story from different elements, and there was a freedom, but everybody had badges with them. At the White House, I never walked into the Oval Office or the Situation Room. These are stipulations that essentially are changing the dynamic about how to get information and how they disseminate information.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like the whole story is being told to our viewers here. What they're really doing, they want to spoon-feed information to the journalists, and that will be their story. That's not journalism. Journalism is going out and finding the story and getting all the facts to support it. And no one's going to walk in and bang on a door of a four-star general or senior civilian policy leader in the Pentagon. I never had that, but I did have journalists chasing a story of something that was going on in the Army, and those things were legitimate. And if anything, what would frustrate us in times is we didn't beat you to it. And something bad is happening, and we're getting our act together to do it. And sometimes, well, let's wait a couple of days before we talk about that, and you guys are on it.
And we know the stipulations about classified information, and if there are leaks or there are situations, there are investigations many times that lead to that. But in the day-to-day, for military families, for military, us being in the Pentagon is usually an asset.
Yeah, I have never, ever seen it. I mean, when I was a four-star general, I insisted that all our new brigadier generals get a class a few days on what the role of the media is in an American democracy. These are all for new generals. And then I wanted them to practice and get interviews and how to deal with the realities of this, because they have all these incredible warfighting skill sets, but dealing with the media isn't one of them. And so the education of them was very important to me, so they would welcome and don't see the media as something to be intimidated by. See the media as your conduit to the American people. And that's how I always saw it and believed in supporting it. There were times when stories were done that make me flinch a little bit. Yeah. But that's usually because we had done something that wasn't as good as we should have done it.
Well, we're all standing in solidarity, almost all of us, and we hope that changes. We'll see where this policy goes. General.
All right. There you go. That was it yesterday on Fox News. I thought that was good. And now let's go over to CNN, where we find our friend Laura Coates talking to the Attorney General of Arizona, who's demanding that Mike Johnson seat the newly elected Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that we are going to have no other choice, Laura, except to take Speaker Johnson to court. If he refuses to respond to us, if he doesn't quickly swear in Adelita Grijalva, again, depriving her of the ability to help her constituents. We've had some flooding out here in Arizona. She has no way to help those people in southern Arizona who have been impacted by that flooding. So many other things that she can and should be doing as an elected member of Congress. And so if I have to, I'll take him to court. Again, there's no legitimate reason for him to refuse to swear her in right now. No other reason that I can think of except that perhaps she's the final vote to discharge the Epstein files. And it's not fair for Mike Johnson to be holding the state of Arizona hostage because he doesn't want to release the Epstein files.
All right. Well, that is the end of the clip show. I normally have a lot of comedy on here, and if I told you what went wrong this morning when I was putting the show together, it was a bit of a technical nightmare, and the comedy clips that I had were good. They were Colbert and Kimmel making fun of Trump's neck vagina a lot, and it was a great point to make about how they're not holding back because their parent companies are owned by Trump-supporting MAGA folks and everything that's been done to them. They are speaking out in the best and worst ways, who the target is, but those clips did not make it. I apologize for it, but I do now have my conversation with Dr. Michael Mann and Dr. Peter Hotez for you. Their new book is so good. You can watch this interview on YouTube. We were live on Monday on YouTube and Substack. Just go to Stand Up with Pete, search Stand Up with Pete at either of those platforms, and go subscribe for free. That's the best thing you can do right now, is go subscribe on Substack and YouTube for free. And also, obviously, as always, write a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That matters a lot. Just the number matters. And so if you haven't written a review of the podcast, that would be great. I know people ask you to do that all the time. If you listen to a lot of podcasts, that is really one of the best things you can do. They measure that. All right, let's get to it right now. It's time to talk science and why it's under siege. Dr. Michael Mann, Dr. Peter Hotez joined me, and they were great, very generous to me at the opening here, and I hope that you will go get this book, and both of them will join me again. Maybe we'll have them at a hangout coming up soon. We'll try to figure that out. Scheduling them together was a goddamn nightmare. It's hard. They got like 17 assistants. They're very important, very busy, doing all kinds of things at the academic level. Actual research from researchers, from scientists. Give it up. It's time for Mann and Hotez. Oh, man, look who it is. Look at these two stooges. Look at these two scientists. Look at these two propagandists. Oh, they're public enemy number 1 and 2. Dr. Michael Mann and Peter Hotez have combined to write this amazing new book, which is so important, Science Under Siege. Hotez, Mann, Dominic, back again. Great to see you guys. Thank you for joining me.
Great to get the band back together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I will say you and your people both reached out to me early on. We've done this book. We hope we can come on. But I also feel like you may have been first on air together with me. That is
correct. That is absolutely correct.
I think that's right.
And we've been trying to recover ever since.
Could you just say
well, Pete, you've been such a trusted source for getting out really good information. I mean, during the pandemic, I don't know how many times we spoke, but I always look forward to it because, well, one, it was sort of, we ratcheted down the, all of the scary stuff and just had a really good, frank discussion. And you were just such a good communicator. So
yeah, we both individually had this relationship with you. And then when we wrote a book together, or even when we were thinking about writing a book together, is when we actually came on that first time to talk with you.
Let's talk more about me. Oh, I'll say one thing about me, which is I think I've been smart enough to literally befriend the people who I have the most respect for. And in both your cases, unfortunately, the most respect for the courage that you both have had to have to lead careers in science, which neither of you thought would become such a dangerous place to be, and for different reasons, which is why you've written this book, Science Under Siege. I'm so glad the best people, in this case you two, are working together. But let's talk about why it needed to be right. First, Dr. Hotez, why did you think writing this book, and specifically with Dr. Mann, who's a climate scientist, you of course are a vaccine scientist, would be good?
Well, I think, Mike and I started comparing notes during the pandemic, and he started seeing how I was getting attacked very much like the way he was a decade before. So I had the benefit of learning from all of his experience on what the heck you do when you get this massive pile on. Like, you remember that whole Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, Bobby Kennedy thing. You reached out to me too, Pete, at that point.
You and I
talked. Are you okay? And we had and I wasn't okay, and we had a good conversation. Mike also reached out, and But to directly answer your question, I think one of the things that we realized was, if you look at the two big threats to humankind, they're pandemics, potentially even worse than COVID. And I think that's a real possibility. We could talk which ones in particular, and the climate crisis. But there's a third component to that. And the third component is the massive disinformation machine that's now blocking our ability to respond to it. So it's condemning humanity to extinction unless we figure out how to tackle anti-science. It's as important as pandemics and climate science. And so the book has an urgency to it to say that it's not okay, that it's not random junk on the internet. It's not misinformation. It's not an infodemic. It's organized, it's deliberate, it's politically motivated, it's financially motivated, and it's killing Americans, and it's going to kill a lot more unless we do something about it.
One of the issues with the financial motivations is in media. And the reporting that we see from obviously your cable news networks, but even including the New York Times, which is sadly why you guys had to give credit to someone like me and several of the others who have brought you on for your book. But you guys should be everywhere, and other people doing similar work should be everywhere talking about the work you do. But Michael, pick up the thread there in terms of the way that so much of the corporate media, mainstream media, well-heeled, profit-driven media has done an injustice to all of the work that you and Peter have done for your whole careers.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be with you and to be here with Peter as well. Just to sort of elaborate a little bit on what he said, it was like PTSD for me about 5 years ago when I saw Peter and Tony Fauci and other public health scientists attacked by many of the same bad actors using the same tactics that I had been attacked with decades ago because of the work that we did, the hockey stick curve that we published in the late 1990s that sort of laid bare the threat of continued fossil fuel burning to the planet. And obviously that was a threat to powerful vested interests like the fossil fuel industry. And then, a couple decades later, I see Peter subject to the same sorts of attacks, reached out to him. We established a friendship, and then we realized we had a book to write. And I'll say we started writing this book more than a year ago. So we had no idea what sort of environment we would encounter when the book came out. And sadly, it is far more relevant. It's far more salient than we ever imagined it could be because of what this current administration is doing. And when it comes to the media coverage, yeah, so, we can't complain. We've gotten some decent opportunities on cable news, and the NewsHour is always, is sort of a great venue for sort of long format discussions, and a number of high profile podcasts and interview sort of shows like yours in particular. This is one we were really looking forward to. So we can't say we haven't had some opportunities to get the word out, but on the other hand, we are talking about the greatest threat to humanity. And it's not just pandemics and the climate crisis. It's the rampant disinformation and the weaponization of disinformation by bad actors that makes it impossible for us to solve any of the problems that we solve. That's the defining threat of our time.
Yeah, and the fact that it's not just attacking the science, which is obviously bad enough, but actively seeking to discredit the scientist and portraying us as public enemies or cartoon villains, and that is so dangerous at so many levels, not the least of which is for young people thinking about becoming a scientist. It
discourages them.
It's absolutely horrible, especially because, Peter, you're actually a good person. Michael's also here. So joining both such it's so
okay. Peter is the sweetest person you could ever.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I've been struggling with writing the book and everything else is this sort of sense of betrayal that I have from my country, right? I mean, and I'm sure Michael could make the same case. I mean, what didn't I do during this pandemic? I mean, I woke up at 4 a.m. to transfer our low-cost COVID vaccine to reach 100 million people in low-income countries at $2 to $3 a dose, no patent. And then I was working late into the night trying to educate the American people on COVID and talking to school teachers to keep schools open and, doing everything I could because of my past expertise making coronavirus vaccines, and said, this is the time to do it, and didn't sleep for 4 years and no compensation, just because it was the right thing to do. And then to have that flipped on its side and be portrayed as an enemy that's tough. I mean,
I'm glad to hear you be so vulnerable and honest about that, because I was always saying those things even before I met you, when I saw the title of your book about Rachel, your daughter with autism. I think that what is the title? Autism did not cause Rachel's.
Yeah, vaccines did not cause Rachel's autism. Yeah,
autism did not cause. You got it. But the point, to me was, and to this day, people are still saying that you're a shill for pharmaceutical companies, when in fact you are the alternative. You are the answer to the opposite is actually true. You developed a vaccine that saved millions of children's lives without pharmaceutical companies and their money.
But Peter, facts should never get in the way of a good smear. That's right. That's the lesson here, isn't it?
That's right. The smear was more important, and it's such a dishonest grifting, and the part that I think we also try to bring up in the book is not only is the politics, but the financial motivation, the health wellness influencer industry, and their role. I mean, you ever wonder why they're all anti-parasitic drugs? Hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin or fenbendazole. It's because you could buy a bucket of it. It's cheap. You could jack up the price, repackage it, and sell it with a $1,600 telehealth visit, which is what they do. And it's interesting how Mr. Kennedy now has even adapted, because I've been talking to him for years, and how he's adapted his rhetoric along those lines. That's why, he can say, during our terrible measles epidemic that began in West Texas, landed 100 kids in the hospital, 2 unnecessary deaths among kids who didn't get vaccinated. He says, well, you can either get the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, or you can get this cocktail of supplements, vitamin A, budesonide, chlorella.
It was during their press conference.
And where the heck does that come from? Well, it comes from he's totally into this health wellness influencer stuff.
Yeah, we should talk more about the health wellness influencer world and make people aware of who they are and what they're doing. But you just touched on it, really important. And we're going to talk more about.
We had one important point there, by the way, that Peter often makes. They wouldn't be able to sell this stuff if they weren't able to discredit what the actual public health says, right? The actual, cures and treatments, medically advised cures and treatments. They need to discredit all of that. They need to discredit the science to be in a position to profit off of their snake oil.
That's right. And to portray us as enemies. That's part of the business model.
It's a twofer. Yeah.
Portray scientists and scientific bodies and others as enemies is what you're referring to. Yeah.
Right. And, trying to say we're all profit driven when obviously they're the profit driven guys and doing it shamelessly.
Yeah. Neither one of you. How many houses do you guys have combined? And are we going to investigate the mortgages? What are you driving now?
Including the one in the Riviera or not?
You still have that? What are you driving now? Dr. Mann, you told me years ago that the most renewable car you could have would be the oldest car that you had, because simply buying a new car, even if it was an EV, is part of a carbon footprint. So at that time, I think you told me that you were driving a 54 Studebaker. Is that still accurate? No seatbelts?
No, it's a Lamborghini now.
Because of you went from
the grant money that we're getting.
I mean, look, we have one car and drives me to work. I'm not complaining. I mean,
every morning
I put my adult kids through.
It's
I put my adult kids through college, and and I live in a very modest townhome 3 miles away from the medical center.
When you were
and I love my life, but I'm not.
Which I've seen. It's a very nice townhome and a very nice neighborhood, by the way. But
the only reason I saw it. The only reason I saw it, to get serious, is that some guy showed up at your house and filmed it, which ironically backfired in a way, because you got to see where Peter lived, and it's a small hut. It's got a thatched roof. And by the way, when his wife drives him to work, he sits in the back, which I think is really pretentious. I'm surprised by that, Peter.
No, I don't do that.
Okay, so
it's one of my favorite subsections of the book, where Peter talks about that attack, that assault. Debate me, bro, is the title of that subsection. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, about that. Both of you knew and know Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Of course, Michael, I don't know if you knew him first, but you knew him because he was a pretty well-known, respected environmentalist. So I think he referenced you for a lot of the work in science that you had published. Peter, of course, was brought in by a family member. You've talked about this publicly, Tim Shriver, to mediate conversations to try to get RFK off the ledge.
Well, it was actually at the request of the NIH. They asked me to talk to Bobby.
Fauci and Dr. Francis.
Collins, yeah. And they asked me, and Tim Shriver mediated, and Tim was great, but Bobby was, deeply dug in, very conspiratorial, and he had zero interest in understanding the science. No interest.
It's not about the science; it's about the ideology.
Well, it was interesting at that time. I was even explaining to him there are some environmental triggers that can interact with autism genes, and I mentioned the case of Depakote or valproic acid. So if you're pregnant and not aware of it on Depakote, that's an anti-seizure medication, mood stabilizer. It'll interact with autism genes and cause an autism phenotype. And I said, Bobby, I can identify 4 or 5 chemicals like this. This is your sweet spot, man. This is your moment. You should be all over this. And he couldn't care less. And And then he has the audacity to pull this stunt a few weeks ago in the White House, saying that now it's Tylenol, which is not high on the list. The evidence there's a lot of evidence against it, like a 2 million person study done at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden 2 years ago. And the evidence for it is very weak, this meta-analysis. And he still doesn't acknowledge the role of autism genes. He still doesn't acknowledge the known chemical exposures that will be associated.
Yeah, and let me add one other thing, because a few weeks ago he was also parroting the climate denial, anti-renewable energy industry talking point that wind turbines kill whales. So he is now an equal opportunity propagandist, and he's playing the role that he's expected to play as part of the Trump administration. It's not just attacking public health science, vaccines. He's actually attacking renewable energy, the solution to the climate crisis. And that's how it's not about the science to him. It's about him being a team player for Team Trump and the fossil fuel industry and other bad actors in this space.
Well, the other team could be, now getting into the book, you love alliteration. Chapter 2, 1 is the puns.
God help me. Yeah.
Chapter 2, plutocrats. Chapter 3, the petrostates. Chapter 4, the pros. Chapter 5, the propagandists. Chapter 6, the press. And Chapter 7, the path forward. Peter, did you try to stop him with all the P's? Did you say maybe it's too much? Because
he came up with it, and I was totally on board.
You didn't even mention the polluters and the politicians.
Right.
Who were part of that too.
Forgive me.
The one part that took adjusting to was, if you notice, there's a lot of Tolkien in there, and I had to take a crash course in Tolkien. I had read a little bit, but I need the education.
I'm here for it. I'm not the nerd that obviously he is, but I think it's helpful, and it's unfortunately prescient as well. But let's talk about, you mentioned Trump and Republicans and the regime, but like when we talk about the plutocrats, I think it's interesting to note the fossil fuel industry, which has always been the villain in creating denial and suspicion around settled science. Now it's fair to say, but I didn't realize that they were also pretty animated and played a central role during the COVID pandemic. Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Mann.
Yeah, and Peter can speak to this as well. One of the interesting connections that we found, or we sort of understood it, but we really sort of dug down into it, was the fact that early on in the pandemic, we saw the Koch brothers play a major role. These are libertarian plutocrats, owners of Koch Industries, the largest privately held fossil fuel interest in the country, in the world, I believe. And so it's understandable, given their politics and their financial interests, why the Koch brothers have been one of the primary funders, primarily through the dark money that they provide to front groups and astroturf organizations, the primary funder of climate denialism and the assault on renewable energy. What's less easy to understand is why did they become so wedded to anti-science on the pandemic side of things? And you have to sort of go back early on in the pandemic, the lockdowns, the stay-at-home orders, the economic downturn because of the social distancing was decreasing the usage of fossil fuels, and it was hurting them at their bottom line. We were seeing a decrease in fossil fuel profits, so they decided we've got to do something about this. They created front groups, the Brownstone Institute, indirectly funded by them, to sort of prop up the anti-science that articulates the case against the need for lockdowns, against the need for masking. And ultimately, they created a rabble. They created this anti-science rabble that was opposed to all of the public health messaging coming from public health experts, and that includes vaccines. And so indirectly, that led naturally to the weaponization of the anti-vax movement against and led to the demonization of people like Peter and Tony Fauci, who were developing those and helping explain why we need to do that.
What would you add, Peter, to the chapter or anything that Michael just said about the plutocrats, the powerful people and interests that persuade, I'll keep it going, powerful people and interests that persuade the propagandists to do what they do?
Yeah, well, one of the head scratchers for me to this day was Elon Musk, who, started out, in my view, as very pro-science, techie kind of guy, right? I mean, SpaceX was
pro-renewable energy and climate,
Neuralink and everything else, and why he chose to go down that rabbit hole and started attacking me and supporting RFK Jr. and all that stuff. I don't get it. I still don't. And then using X is sort of the weapon of choice now for anti-science activism.
I think the answer to that, by the way, is he's talked about it, the woke mind virus, which is what he refers to, and he is a trans child, and like he's dead to him. Like I feel like that was the thing that was more important than anything else that drove him, was this idea that the kind of this generation and the way they think made his kid trans or something.
Yeah, one of the things that I've tried for years, and it's clearly not working, is I would say, look, anyone's entitled to their political views. That's your right as an American, but don't adopt this anti-science stuff because it's going to kill you. And how do you uncouple the anti-science from this kind of libertarian far right mentality? It's just not working. And it's the harder I try, the worse I seem to do at it. It's, and it's so self-defeating. I mean, in Texas alone, of the 100,000 COVID deaths, almost half were after vaccines became available, because so many Texans in rural conservative areas refused COVID vaccines because they're watching Fox News every night or, various conspiracy podcasts. And it's just horrible to watch this thing unfold.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, Musk, we talk about this in the book. There's actually one of the plutocrats, Rupert Murdoch, who funds who created News Corp. The Murdoch media empire has been used as a cudgel against climate, against vaccines, and has this global reach. And he literally inspired a Bond villain in Tomorrow Never Dies. The villain in that Bond movie was based in substantial part on Rupert Murdoch. So he actually was inspired directly a Bond villain. But Elon Musk really, I think more than anyone else we can think of, underwent this Bond villain-like arc.
Yep.
Right? He was a hero. He was wronged. In some way, he felt he was hurt by sort of the criticism that he was receiving from people on the progressive side, reacted to that by sort of befriending the other side, becoming part of the conservative machine. And you have to accept, if you are going to be accepted by the right-wing MAGA community, you've got to adopt all of their tenets. You can't, it's not a, it's not, And so that includes, it includes climate denial. And so here he was weaponizing Twitter, which he purchased in part with money. It was leveraged by Saudi Arabia and Russia, two of the largest petrostates, leveraged his purchase of Twitter so that they could weaponize Twitter for the promotion of their sort of anti-science talking points, including climate denial, including the assault on renewable energy. And so the irony here is somebody who built his name and his reputation on renewable energy, on Tesla, electric vehicles, Sun City, solar technology, now has actually become one of the primary fomenters of anti-science.
And I think the other really frustrating part is you watch, if someone starts adopting some anti-science rhetoric in one area, it quickly metastasizes and they buy the whole farm and it's everything. So if someone starts out as a climate denier, they start
It's not a la carte.
Anti-vaccine and right. It's you have to buy the prefix menu, right?
Yeah.
And so you buy the whole thing, and that's really interesting to watch.
We could spend the whole time using culinary references if you want us to, but it might
I think that there should be those are the rules for the rest of this conversation. I got to ask you both, tie it into the book however you want. Everybody should go buy Science Under Siege, which these two guys wrote together, and if you if you aren't a scientist and you don't do research for a living, please shut up, is what I tell people in general. Anybody in my life. I'm like, well, do you do research? You know what? People have degrees in just doing research. But I got to ask you.
Don't shut up, but do promote, if you're going to use your voice, promote what the science has to say rather than what some bad actors want you to say.
Well, yeah, but then people will pick and choose their quote science. But again, just at least rely on someone who does science, because you don't. You mentioned these health and wellness, people. I'm so sick of people talking about like parts of the brain and what gets stimulated. I'm like, you don't know about the amygdala. Shut up. Okay, sorry. Both of you, I want to understand what has gone on with research and in terms of the cuts as well, from Doge, as well as from the administration, the threats to the universities that you're affiliated with in terms of their demands that you work within their ideas of hiring, much less teaching ideology. There's a big concern about where you're going to get funding to conduct research. And on the other end, or some other direction, there's a concern with the interference that you're getting from the federal government with the actual research that you do get funding. Peter, you want to take a stab at that first?
Sure. It's a big piece to chew off. There was this proposal from the Trump administration to cut the National Institutes of Health budget by 40%, going back to 2005 levels, which really would have been lights out, for American science. Congress sort of held the line, although it's not clear whether it was Congress or whether there was some glitch in the budget process where they didn't make the cuts fast enough. And so there's a question of whether we're going to be okay for this year. It'll be a flatline budget, which is a small decrease, and then the bottom will fall out the following year. But I think equally important, it's the uncertainty, because what's happening now is people are getting fundable scores on their very competitive grant applications. And this is happening with some of our faculty, but not being told whether the grant's actually going to get supported or not. So there's sort of the psychological warfare they're waging, particularly against young scientists who are really dependent on for their early NIH funding to get started. And so the consequences of that are, if you're a young scientist, you're saying, well, is this what I signed up for, and should, what do you do? And how do you stay positive and give them cause for optimism without telling them to just move to France or something and keep them in the U.S. So I'm worried about a substantial brain drain and there will be a significant brain drain, but trying to minimize the hemorrhaging.
I mean, we could talk further about just what it means for the future of medicine and vaccines. I'll come back to that. Obviously, I think we're seeing a lot more transparent moves against the federal government initiatives to fight the climate crisis.
Oh, yeah. They've killed the whole vaccine infrastructure also. That's
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so certainly on the vaccine side of things, on the life science side, the cuts to NIH, and then when it comes to climate science and a whole array of other areas, critical areas of science, the cuts to the National Science Foundation. And sort of one of the things that they've been doing is literally searching grant proposals for keywords like climate, right, or, clean energy, what have you, and defunding, not just cutting programs that support research in that area, closing departments, large parts of NOAA, the EPA, but not just cutting funding for new research in the academic and private sector and public sector, but actually defunding proposals that had already been funded because they contain words like climate, clean energy, et cetera. And so there is this assault, obviously, on science in general. And the title of our book, again, our book had that title before Trump was elected to a second term. So we had no idea just how much science would be under siege in a way that we've never seen. You have to go, and we can get into this, you have to go back to Stalin-era Soviet Union to find such a brazen, ideologically motivated assault on science and scientists as we're seeing in the United States today.
There's some hope in the fact that the rest of the world is moving on without us when it comes to the future of life sciences and things like renewable energy, carbon capture, whatever it might be. Yeah. People look at China and Europe and other places. Peter, is that where the hope lies? Can we get our mojo back here in the U.S. and be the preeminent research facility, universities, and can the CDC rebuild its reputation? It seems like if they can, by the way, it would take a long time for all.
Yeah, we have Mike's term that he taught me was there's urgency, but we do have agency, and we can't just give up or fall prey to doomism, as he calls it. And I think this is one of the things that I try to point out, especially when I speak to Republican members in the House and Senate. I say, look, remember, we are a nation built on the strength of our research institutes and universities. This is what gave us the Manhattan Project and victory in the Cold War and helped us make progress against HIV/AIDS and cancer. You destroy this and you really destroy who we are as a nation and our own security and our own supremacy. So it's in our enlightened self-interest to fix that. But, right now, the attack on science just seems to be full on right now. I mean, they've pressed the pedal all the way down and to undermine it. And I think we're going to see long-term ramifications on who we are as a country.
Yeah, as I like to point out, if you were to imagine a scenario where an administration is trying to sabotage the United States, trying to do the bidding of our worst enemies like Russia, and basically destroying our entire infrastructure for science and technology moving forward at a critical moment in history. If that were what was going on, how would it look any different from what's actually going on? I think that's the question to ask.
I don't like that question because I can't answer it with a lot of evidence, hypothetically or not. Maybe I don't understand how bad it is there or it has been in the past.
Well, Pete, when I get or Mike gets the threatening email or the stalking saying the Army of Patriots is coming to hunt me down or hunt us down, I say, wait a minute, guys, let's remember who the real patriots are, right? The scientists are the patriots. We helped build this country. And, my dad fought in World War II as a 19-year-old ensign in the Pacific Theater in Okinawa and Saipan in the Philippines. Why did he fight? He fought because he wanted his kids to become doctors and scientists. And that's the country I grew up in. And I sometimes feel this is not the country I grew up in anymore.
That was a battle against fascism, right? That was what defined us in World War II, was we were united in a battle against fascism. And here we are now.
Yeah, it's back. And it's got a whole new version. Let me just ask you, though, just in general about how science is conducted and funded these days. Like, what is the state of your science, Peter, studying vaccines and virology and the life sciences? Like, what is the current state? And explain it to me like I'm a person with an associate's degree in humanities.
We made this low-cost COVID vaccine reaching 100 million people, but we have a full portfolio of vaccines for low- and middle-income countries. We have a hookworm anemia vaccine, a schistosomiasis vaccine, a Chagas vaccine, and others. And so we want to really roll those out. And over the years, we've learned to diversify our portfolio of funding, so we have private sources of funding as well. But the concern is for the new scientists coming up that depend on that first NIH grant to get started, or at least for the first 10 years of their career. That's where we're eating our young right now, is, wiping out that whole new generation of scientists. So the effects, personally, I'll be okay, and I think our laboratory will be okay. But for the new young faculty, new young scientists coming up, they're looking at me like, Moses in the desert, why did you bring us here? And trying to explain that, we're going to find alternative paths through biotech funding or the private sector. And yes, that'll fill some of the gaps, but you'll never fill the full on force of the U.S. federal government.
Right. I want to be clear here that it was Peter who admitted that we're actually eating the young. For the QAnon folks out there, It's not me. It's not the climate scientists who are doing that, who are drinking the blood of young children in the basement of a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C., which is next to Politics and Prose, where Peter and I did.
Where we did a book event, which was great.
We actually went to Orbit Pizza afterwards.
Not Orbit. It's called something else.
It's now
Comet or something.
Comet Pizza. Yeah.
It doesn't matter, guys. Don't argue about it. Here's the thing, though. I watched that Politics and Prose, and it was great. It was just the two of you. And then when you went to the Q&A, some guy did eventually come up and ask about like the lab leak theory of COVID and so on. And you were respectful and you moved on to the next question. But I mean, no matter where you go in public, you're going to get people asking you all kinds of these conspiracy theories. You try to handle them as best you can. My issue is always like, how much time do they get? Like, why are we giving this person or that person space or time to ask a question? At a book reading like this or something, of course, you're going to have.
Well, this is the problem, Pete, is that the New York Times.
There we are.
Right. And the Washington Post and their
platforming.
The whole editorial sections of those two papers basically helped build this whole amazing, completely wrong conspiracy theory that's been discredited by every virologist, even our intelligence departments.
Now, this is a point that Peter and I make in that final second to last chapter on the press. You know, we're not just talking about the Murdoch media, the bad actors in the press world. Obviously, they are a big part of the problem, actively promoting disinformation, ideologically motivated disinformation, and they have this sort of global reach to do that. But we're also talking about the legacy media, like the New York Times and the Washington Post, that have platformed pseudoscience and anti-science at times in a very unhelpful way and engage in what we call performative neutrality, this idea that they have to present conspiracy theories about, lab leaks as if they're on an equal footing with the overwhelming consensus of the world's scientists. And it's true in climate as well. We see them doing the same thing on climate.
I haven't paid attention to or thought much about the conspiracy theories or origin of COVID, but just to be clear, again, I wouldn't question certainly what Peter says or what both of you say. There is no evidence. You're saying of a lab leak. All evidence still points to zoological. What's it called?
Zoonotic spillover. Yeah, we've got half a dozen or more papers in the best scientific journals. Places like Cell and Science Magazine. The top journals in our field, done by some extraordinary teams of scientists that have really traced the origins of the SARS-2 virus through the wet markets and showing in detail how it's evolved exactly the same way the original SARS did back in 2002, which makes a lot of sense. And why SARS-3 is probably brewing out there is going to evolve yet again because we haven't learned any lessons from it. There's not a single scientific paper on lab leak or gain of function because it didn't happen. And all of the journal editors have said, if they come across a paper that gives credible evidence for lab leak or gain of function, they'll be all in. But so far, nobody does it. And if you look who's pushing those theories, none of them are virologists. They're all, scientists in other fields, most of them desperate for relevance and just come up with this stuff. And it's, and yet, if you look at the surveys, I think a majority of Americans actually believe now that the SARS-2 virus came from a lab leak when there's zero evidence. I mean, if I had the time to write the book, I'd call it 21st century Piltdown Man, getting back to the hoax that was done in the 1800s.
I don't know. There's an analogy here that I want to draw because it's an opportunity to actually bring these two areas of science together. So there is, as Peter's saying, there's this sort of fingerprint where we can see the fingerprint of those zoonotic spillover events. We see in the data evidence that that's what happened. And you have the same thing with climate change. We can see that there's the fingerprint. If you look at the data, if you look at how the surface of the planet and the lower atmosphere is warming, while the stratosphere, the upper part of the atmosphere is actually cooling, that is a fingerprint. That is a prediction specifically of what we expect to see happen as we increase the greenhouse effect through fossil fuel burning. And so the science provides a fingerprint, and scientists have definitively found that fingerprint. And yet you continue to hear among climate deniers this idea, well, yeah, but it could be natural. That is akin to this idea, well, yeah, it could be a lab leak, even though we can actually see the fingerprint of the zoonotic spillover in the data.
what about the current state of climate science and the movement of denialists and conspiracies around it? There's so much to talk about with it, but you've got conspiracy theorists now in charge of all parts of the federal government, from the Congress, obviously, to the White House, but specifically EPA. We're bringing back coal. I read yesterday there's a new research or new data out that solar has officially surpassed, or is it renewable energy, officially surpassed the cost of coal. Trying to find the exact study. We just had Sunday here, led by environmental activists and Bill McKibben and so on. But what do you want to say, Peter, about the state of the conspiracy around climate change as we watch houses fall into the ocean?
If you're climate change, I guess you mean me, probably.
Yes, I'm sorry, not Peter. I would love to ask Peter about climate change. If
he has good things to say about it. Yeah, well, there's an irony, and it connects back with what we were saying about sort of the legacy media. So on that day, Sunday, Bill McKibben champions of renewable energy, of climate action, celebrating the huge potential that we can solve this problem. We've got the technology, solar energy, wind, etc. And so we're supposed to be celebrating that. What did the New York Times run on their editorial page? They ran an op-ed promoting geoengineering, the idea that we can shoot particles into the atmosphere to block out the sun as a way to cool the planet back down. So it was ironic that rather than championing the clean energy solution, the only safe and assured solution to the problem, they were championing dangerous interference with the climate system to try to basically cover up the effect of human-caused warming. And here's the irony of ironies.
Other than that, we can't figure out why the New York Times hasn't reviewed our book yet.
Exactly. And what's so ironic there is that particular gambit would actually decrease the amount of energy from the sun available for solar energy. And they ran it on Sunday.
Oh, I don't like that. That's statistics I was looking for. I mentioned this yesterday. NPR reported this. I don't know what scientific body had it. For the first time, renewable energy has overtaken coal as the primary source of electricity around the world. A new report. That's a pretty big deal.
Here's the point, right? All we get to decide at this point is whether the United States is going to be part of the great economic revolution of this century, the clean energy revolution, or whether we get left behind. The rest of the world is moving on, will move on. And all we get to decide is whether or not we're left at the station. And if we follow the policies of the current administration, that's precisely what happens.
Last question, gentlemen. Where are you drawing hope? The last chapter of the book is The Path Forward, and it starts, of course, with some reference to Token, J.R. Token. Where do you find hope? You're both such great guys. You've been such good friends to me over the years, personally and professionally, and I have so much respect for both of you. And part
back at you, Pete. Yep.
Same.
Part of it is because of your kind of general posture and your look towards positivity and inspiration and hope. I've tried to build this community here, and you guys have built communities around your research and your work and in different ways. Where, Michael Mann, Dr. Mann, do you find inspire hope? What's the path forward?
We're effed. I mean, I'm sorry. No, I'm just kidding. That's going to be the headline here. Mike Mann says we're effed. No, we are not yet at the point where, again, Peter talked about agency. We talk so much about urgency, but we talk about agency. It has to go with it. Yes, we need to act to avert catastrophe. And yes, it's not too late to take actions to avert catastrophe. And the obstacles, they're not physical or biological. We have the tools. They're not technological. Again, we've got the tools to do this. They are entirely political, and political obstacles can be overcome. And so I look at where we are right now. We're a year away from a midterm election that will determine, the path forward. There is still an opportunity for the American people to collectively say, this is not the direction we want to go in. We want to change, and to actually be the change that they wish to see by turning out and voting and using their voice and engaging in nonviolent protests and demonstrations and doing everything we need to do to raise awareness about the not just dangerous, but existential threat that we face if we continue down this road that we're on. It's not too late to take an exit off that road. And people need to recognize that, especially going into this next pivotal midterm election.
Well said. Dr. Hotez, same question. Inspiration.
So we've been, making recombinant protein vaccines, older technology vaccines for low and middle income countries. But the scientists in our laboratory have now really accelerated made improvements to the mRNA technology and the delivery mechanism. And now we can use this to start targeting cancers. So I was invited to a thesis committee meeting at Baylor by a colleague of mine, a lab headed by this guy, Bing Zhang, and he has this amazing student that, is finding new neoantigens in triple negative breast cancer. So I said, now that the mRNA technology is working by Jeroen Pollitt in our lab, we can now probably target that and make a cancer vaccine. He goes, well, why the heck do you think we invited you to the thesis committee meeting? So, and now we're, working together on that. They're the cancer biologists. We're the vaccine delivery technology people in this case. And then it occurred to me, there's almost no disease agent right now that we can't make an immunotherapeutic or vaccine to. The technology is advanced that far, and then you throw a little AI into it, and it even accelerates it even faster. The key now is the technology is outpacing our political, social, and financial instruments to make it happen. And so that keeps me going. The young people and the discoveries that they're making in the laboratory, I mean, the future is really bright from that point. And that's what keeps me going, is to know that there really is something worth fighting for now.
Yeah.
I would love to talk with you guys another time about the role AI is playing in both your lives and your work and the research that you're doing.
There's the good and the bad, no question about it. Yep.
Yeah, it would seem that there's a lot of good, but there's a lot of bad.
Well, you may have spoken to Renee DiResta before.
No, I don't think so.
She's talked to a fascinating person, used to work at the Stanford Internet Observatory until the House Republicans made Stanford shut it down. Yeah. But she's an extraordinary individual, and she wrote and thinks about the future of technology and AI and things like that, and wrote something at the beginning of the pandemic, and I think it was in the Atlantic, and the article was AI is about to make disinformation go infinite, something to that effect. And that's what you're starting to see now. So as bad as things are, because the AI is so clever. I mean, we saw that with the Maha report, right? It combines fake reference, because they used AI for it. It combines fake references with real references and so you can't figure out what's a fake reference, what's a real reference, and all that kind of stuff. And so this is how dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this in the book as well. We need common sense regulations for this technology because, as we said, the third and the greatest threat that we face is not just pandemics, not just climate crisis. It's disinformation, anti-science disinformation that makes it impossible for us to act.
Yeah, I mean,
that is being magnified by AI in a way we never could have imagined.
You've seen just in the past few weeks alone on social media, I've seen unbelievable videos of dead people, like a video of Lincoln, Dr. King, and JFK, like
walking to a bar.
And it looks real. Like someone could, at a bar, someone could take a video of us right now and make Peter be selling ivermectin and you're selling coal, and no one would know the difference. So guys, right now I'd ask you to debunk it by proving, Dr. Mann, that you are in fact Dr. Michael Mann. How do you do it?
I do it by making sure that our coal interests are well hidden.
Do you have a birthmark that no one knows about? Dr. Hotez?
Well, if you remember, like a year or so ago, there was this whole thing that actually on the internet, on social media, that said I'm not a real person, that I'm actually Jack Black, and I'm Jack Black working with the CIA, and I went with it, short Jewish guy, right? I mean, it's.
Have I ever met? I don't know that you are real. I don't think I've ever met you in person, Peter.
There you go. So
Peter was the big star in King Kong. I mean, that was Peter.
That is hilarious. Well,
so although just for the record, I had a stand-in for the underpants scene in
that's
county.
Right. The world wasn't ready for that yet. Yeah.
I'd love to end on that fun note, but I do feel like asking you, Peter, like you mentioned this, like maybe it might have been one of the last times I spoke to you via off air, at least, was about Joe Rogan had wanted you to come on and debate RFK. It became a massive news item. There was a tremendous amount of tension. In the end, you decided that would be a terrible idea. I agree. I agreed then. I agree now. You don't have any regrets about that, do you?
No, I mean, what they wanted me to do is they wanted to schmooze him up and make him look like a more serious person than he is by putting him next to a serious scientist. Right. And at that time, they were trying to promote him he was running for president, and I didn't want to help his candidacy. But I also, the other reason I didn't do it is I thought it sent the wrong message to young people, again, how we do science, right? I can't think of a single instance where science was advanced by debate, especially debate with a crackpot, that has no interest, or someone who has no interest in the science.
In the book, we talk about that quite a bit, why it's problematic to platform anti-science and to put it on an equal footing with the consensus science. There's one person, I think.
And Michael, I think it was you who told me that, the minute you do that, right, you've lost 90% of the battle because you've already given equal weight to the crackpot.
You've got to spend the rest of the debate working back to where the actual weight of evidence holds. Another way of sort of framing it is, when it comes to debating a science denier, that's going to look great on their resume. It's going to look awful on yours.
Yeah. And by the way, I said I would go on the Joe Rogan podcast, and I did 2 times before. I'll do it again, but it's Joe Rogan that doesn't want it, right? So, but I'm not going to go. I think I told Mehdi Hassan this. I'm not going to go on the Joe Rogan show to turn it into the Jerry Springer show and debate our RFK Jr.
That's what they want, a circus, because circus tells everybody, it's all in doubt. We don't know who to trust. It's all up in the air. They win because they're not trying to build something. They're trying to tear something down. That's
as people like Ann Applebaum or Hannah Arendt or Ruth Ben-Ghat, point out, the goal of propaganda is not to make you believe the lies. It's to confuse you so you don't know what to believe. And that's what propaganda is.
I think both of you, your real incentive is to get closer with celebrities. So now, who is the biggest celebrity that you are in a first name, cell phone, text? Now, Dr. Mann, I think you and Leonardo DiCaprio are pretty tight. Is that right?
Yeah, I can't talk about everything that Leo and I have done together. But what I can say, when we were watching the movie Don't Look Up, I was watching it with my daughter. Netflix sent us a code so we could sort of preview it before it appeared. Oh, cool. And we're watching the film, and my daughter is like, the Leo DiCaprio character plays the scientist, the astronomer, and his graduate student who detect this comet that's going to strike Earth, a metaphor for the climate crisis. And she's watching Leo's mannerisms, and she's, Dad, that's you. That's you. He's playing you. And I said that, no, that's foolish. And then a couple of weeks later in an interview, Leo name checks me when he was asked about the character in that film. And because we over the years, I have had many conversations with him about the climate crisis. He's a real champion of climate action. And I may be the climate scientist he knows best. So it was natural that he might draw upon his interactions with me.
Is it true that they originally wanted Jason Alexander for the role because he looked more like you than Leo?
That's not true. That's not true at all. They felt that Leo didn't capture the real charisma.
Hotez gave me the greatest name drop of all time a couple of years ago when he told me, I think maybe you'd never said this in an interview, but you actually met in person Jonas Salk. So you have something signed by him, I believe. So that's a pretty...
Yeah, and I got to meet him towards the end of his life, and he was helping me and got to spend a whole afternoon in his office at the Salk Institute overlooking the beach and showing me his wife's paintings. His second wife was Françoise Gillot, who was, I think she was Picasso's mistress at the time. She's passed away as well.
Yeah, quickly this gets salacious. I mean,
I love that.
But I've got to meet some extraordinary people. One of my favorite was Dikembe Mutombo.
How'd you meet him?
Because people don't know this, but after games, he used to go into the opposing locker room and shake people down to help raise money for his hospital that he was building in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where he's from. He was a great humanitarian and built a hospital in Congo, and is fascinated by global health and got connected with them. And it was
Peter's
always
a great point guard too.
And then what was the moment was we were at the Clinton Global Initiative standing next to each other, and it got filmed. It got photographed for Jet Magazine.
Yeah.
used to buy it in the grocery stores, and people would come up to me. I saw you in Jet with Tuba. That was
that's hilarious.
I mean,
he was literally twice my height.
On a serious note, though, I mean, this is one thing that scientists can do. We can interact with opinion leaders, celebrities, people who have huge reaches, and we can have a much greater impact by helping inform them. And so, some people say, "Oh, you're just hobnobbing with." No, there's actually a reason to try to create a circle that allows you to communicate far more broadly.
If Taylor Swift or Leonardo Messi or the leading influencers on Instagram wanted to have you on to talk about your book, you should go. Yeah, absolutely. Fully agree with that. And then I hope that you live a life of glamour and glitz on a.
We do. Each of us has a Hollywood star now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the two least glamorous men I've ever met in my life, Dr. Michael Mann and Dr. Peter. Look at their space. I mean, you can even see where they're sitting. Look at it. He's got his book. They both have
just for the record. Debunk that. I got written up in Room Raters. How to rate your room.
I stand corrected. I had no.
Wait.
It was an example of something you don't want to emulate. It was do not do this.
Looking much more like H.L. Mencken than I like to think of myself as. So
that's pretty good. All right, gentlemen.
I can talk all day, I know, but this has been great, Pete. Thanks so much.
Pete, you've always been amazing, giving us a voice and giving me a voice. I'm so deeply grateful. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys more than you could ever know, and I hope to see you both in person soon. Everybody watching live, thank you for watching live. Get the book, follow them, support them everywhere, and I'm so grateful to both of you for all the work that you've done in all the ways. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you everybody for watching live. All right, guys. Thanks, you.
Friend.
Thank you. All the best.
There you go. Mann, Hotez, Science Under Siege. Get the book. Watch that on YouTube if you want, or Substack. Subscribe over there. Support Michael and Peter on all the social media networks. It's all linked in the show notes as they are every day. Go see John Carroll live with us on November 6th in Virginia. Go to johncarroll.org. He writes and performs all the music for us here on the show. We love him. We support him, and everybody else. Thank you. Hope to see you at tomorrow night's Hangout. And that is it. Very grateful to have you here and that you are you. I appreciate you. Talk to you tomorrow.
When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up on your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. Let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't in sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change would begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time. and see them flee the scene of that experiment. If you stand up, alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up,